Hello everybody, welcome to That's Football for our Premier League preview. I'm going to talk about Jurgen Klopp first of all, and by the time you're watching this, maybe Premier League games have been postponed due to the sad passing of the Queen, but maybe games will be going ahead, so I can just clip the bit at the end if the games don't go ahead. But what I can talk about, no matter what, is Jurgen Klopp under pressure at Liverpool, and there's no question that he's under pressure. I think there has been some silly reactions that maybe he's going to follow in the path of Thomas Tuchel and be sacked. I don't think you understand Liverpool Football Club if you think that Jurgen Klopp will be sacked anytime soon. He's rebuilt that football club. They hadn't won a Premier League ever. Hadn't won a league title in 30 years. The way he's rebuilt that club, I personally said it. It's on record. I didn't think I'd see Liverpool win a title again in my lifetime, which meant I didn't think they were going to win it any time in the next 40 years. So, or longer, hopefully. But yeah, and he did it in a very short period of time, building that club from top to bottom, the structure, the players. He's done a fantastic job, and they have had problems before. They had the COVID season where they had major injuries at the defence, and they still managed to get top four, and they had some bad results. I mean, do you not remember? They were unbeaten at Anfield. They lost that record, I think, unfairly because there was no bloody fans in the ground anyway. Didn't they get beat by Everton and Brighton and Bournemouth or something like that? They lost a lot of games. So Liverpool in crisis, yes, but it's not a shock and it's not unprecedented. And they are under pressure, but I think the only way that Jurgen Klopp would leave Liverpool is if he decides he wants to leave Liverpool. I can't see a world where Liverpool fans would put up with them Klopp being sacked, and I don't think that Liverpool's owners would ever be stupid enough to do that. So yeah, I don't think we're in that conversation at all. I think it's ridiculous, and I don't think that is worth entertaining. What is worth discussing is whether can Klopp get Liverpool back into a title race this season? And I think that is more somewhat questionable. My honest answer is that they're not beyond hope yet, but if they don't turn this around very, very quickly, they won't be in a title race this season. And for Liverpool, that's not acceptable. That's something they've been doing for the last few years. But I think it's very obvious what's going on with Liverpool, by the way. The intensity is very, very clear to notice that it's fallen off. When I think of Liverpool at their best, and obviously we saw a lot of it last year, very hard to play against. They pin you in your own half. They encourage you to hit the ball long, and they've got defenders who are quick and able to just win the possession back, and then it's a wave of another possession, attack. And if you try and play through them, they will press the life out of you. That's not happening. Napoli played through Liverpool so easily, like a hot knife through butter at times. The defending was woeful. The midfield intensity was dreadful. And you take away what Liverpool are about, and they become very beatable. And ultimately, that's what's happened to Liverpool this season. And Klopp, for whatever reason, obviously the loss of Mane, you lose a world-class player, is going to hinder you. But Diaz has probably been one of their better players, and he plays in the Mane role. So that's not a total excuse. I personally think it comes down to the midfield. Games are won and lost in the midfield. I've seen it with United for the last 3 years. People have said it's this reason, it's that reason, it's the midfield. And Liverpool's midfield at the moment is shockingly bad. It's just too light. Thiago gets injured. Henderson's not really on form. Fabinho's been injured. And you're playing people like Harvey Elliott, who we don't even know what his level is. A lot of Liverpool fans seem to think Harvey Elliott's a good player. Milner's passed it, but it's not the same. Like when Liverpool came to Old Trafford a few weeks ago and you looked at the midfield and you went, yeah, that's our biggest, weakest area. And I thought, you know what? I think our midfield's stronger than theirs. And so it came to pass. So Liverpool need to sort that midfield out. The lack of investment in the midfield was a problem, but Liverpool are always quite odd in the transfer window anyway. They don't always solve their problems in the transfer window. And there's a lot of faith in Jurgen Klopp's ability to get the most out of a select group of players that can play 60 games and exceed expectation. The energy levels have fallen across that team, and maybe there's burnout from last year where, a few short months ago we were talking about Liverpool potentially being historical quadruple winners, and they ended up with no Premier League and no Champions League. So I think Liverpool are suffering from a few things: a lack of depth in the midfield, a continuity issue with Mane going, and a lack of intensity in the team in general. I think the team looks tired, and this is something that can happen with Liverpool. And I remember speaking to somebody about this a few years ago, and they said that if you look at Klopp and you look at his teams, he does work them very, very hard. And that can lead to a situation where you have a season where it's just all or nothing intensity and everything. And then the following season, there can be a drop off, because there has to be a drop off, because physically players cannot go at that intensity every year. So maybe we're just seeing Liverpool going through a bit of a, not transition, bit of a rest period. Doesn't mean it won't suddenly come back at this weekend. Doesn't mean it won't necessarily come back before Christmas. It could come back in October. We don't know. But I do lean towards maybe this Liverpool team is just going through a bit of a recuperation at the moment, whereby, and maybe it was planned. Maybe Klopp knew that this team wasn't going to hit this season running, but felt that they'd have enough to just grind out the results. Because teams do that. United used to do it. You can still win the league. You can start the season off doing not particularly well, but grinding out the results. Look at Spurs. Spurs haven't necessarily had a very good performance this season yet, but they've picked up a lot of wins and a lot of results. They're not playing scintillating football like they did at the end of last season with the front three of Son, Kulusevski and Kane. They're not playing like that, but they're getting the results. And maybe Klopp came into this year and thought, we're good enough that we'll just grind out those results. And then by October, we'll go up through the gears and build towards later in the season, because there's definitely an issue with transition. But I don't think it's a crisis for Liverpool in the sense that, you're going to need to change your manager or anything like that. But they do have some key games coming up. Obviously, Liverpool Wolves on Saturday afternoon. That's followed up with, I believe, they then play Chelsea away, which is a difficult game, and then it's an international break. So Liverpool, to get back on track, they do need to start winning games of football, because at the moment in the Premier League table, they're down in 7th and they're 6 points off the top. If they beat Wolves and they beat Chelsea, then they can only be 6 points off the top, maybe even closer. But if that gap opens up a little bit more, I think it becomes very, very difficult. And it's a very long season. Of course, it's a very long season, but it's a very long season for Liverpool as well. And fatigue and confidence drains and increases when... Well, confidence drains and fatigue increases when you're getting bad results. And you can see that in the players against Napoli. So they need something confident, and I think they need to go and beat Wolves and Chelsea. Do I think they'll do it? Funnily enough, I don't. And do I think they'll be in a title race this year? I don't. It's not impossible, and I'm probably more 50-50. But I think Liverpool's season needs to get back on track, maybe for the Champions League or maybe for some domestic cups. I think they're going to struggle to get involved in a title race this year. I just think this might be a recuperation year for Liverpool, where we've seen it before. They have a really, really intense season, and then they have to drop off a little bit to recuperate, and then they'll go again at some point. But I think talks of Klopp being sacked and things like that are somewhat ridiculous. Let's have a look at the rest of the Premier League fixtures. So our plan this weekend on That's Football is actually to start off with the opening game, which is Fulham against Chelsea. Graham Potter managing his first game, Saturday lunchtime game. I fancy Chelsea to win this. I think you're going to get the new players, you're going to get the new manager bounce. And I wouldn't have fancied them if it was Thomas Tuchel. I think they were in a bad shape, even though I think that Tuchel was treated dreadfully. But I do think you'll get a bounce. I think it's happened at Chelsea many times. You sack a manager, people are thinking, oh, the players have let the manager down. New manager comes in and the players are like, right, we're not getting the blame. Let's go and perform. So I expect Chelsea to beat Fulham. Bournemouth-Brighton's an interesting game. Normally I would have gone for Brighton to win that. But again, it's another game impacted by Potter's movement. For Brighton, it's difficult. Will they sink now? Because Potter was a big part of what they're all about. And it might be a good time for Bournemouth to play Brighton, especially after their win against Forest last week. So tough one to call. I'm going to go with a draw there. Leicester against Villa is a massive game. Massive game. You could call it the sack race. Rodgers with 1 point. I think Villa have got 4 points. Terrible start for both teams. If you lose that, I don't really know how you stay in post. The interesting thing for Villa is if they sack Gerrard, I think the number one and perfect candidate was local lad Graham Potter, who is now not available. So where Villa would go after Potter, would Pochettino go to Villa? I don't know. So interesting to see if that game is a loss for either team, whether the manager survives till Monday. But I would probably say it'll be a draw. Liverpool Wolves, we've spoken about. I do fancy Liverpool to win that. They need to respond, and it's at Anfield, and Wolves don't score many goals. So I think it could be a draw, but I fancy a Liverpool win. Southampton, Brentford, very difficult to call that one. I'd just go with a home win. Man City Tottenham, not really being spoken about, and it's the big game of the weekend. We're doing a watch along for that one as well. So Man City Tottenham, probably for me, I would say Man City will win that one. I'd love Spurs to get something, even a draw, but I don't think Spurs are playing particularly well at the moment, and I think they'll play into Man City's hands by trying to defend the game and hit on the counter, which they can do. There could be a shock there, but I just think Man City will win that one. And then on to Sunday, you've got Arsenal, Everton. I fully expect Arsenal to bounce back from the loss to United last weekend. And I think Arsenal will continue their good season with a win against Everton, who again struggled to score goals. West Ham, Newcastle. West Ham just don't seem to be able to catch a break, do they? They just can't get the momentum going because every week it's a tough game. There's not many easy games in the Premier League, especially if you're in that area of a West Ham and a Newcastle. So I think a draw in that one. And then Palace Man United completes the weekend at 4:30 kickoff. Obviously, we'll be live on the United Stand for that. I fancy a draw in that. I fancied a draw anyway. I think I did Ben Foster's Premier League predictions that should be out today as well. And I think I predicted a draw on that. And I think I'm going to stick with it on here. Not because United's performance on Thursday. I think Palace are a good team, and I think United were doing well, and we might grind out another result like we did against Southampton and Leicester. But I think at some point that's not going to work, and I think this could be a draw. So that's what I'm going to go with there. Anyway, smash a like on the video, subscribe, get involved. Some hopefully big games this weekend. What are your thoughts on Klopp? I don't think they can get in a title race this year, but I don't think it's going to be a crisis season. I think they will get back. I just think they're going through a recuperation period where their intensity's dropped. They are missing Mane, but their midfield is just not strong enough. Get your comments in below. I'll speak to you in a bit.